Right into my soul. Hello, hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
This is Peyton Thomas. I'm Anthony Oliveira. We are here for the launch of Both Sides Now, Peyton Thomas's new book from Penguin Teen. We are at Glad Day Bookshop. They are grinding coffee beans right now, which is that noise you're hearing. This is a hybrid event, so there's a lot of friends around. Not too many, I promise. Yeah. A lot of friends around us right now. They're all masked. We are double vaxxed.
We are both double vaxxed, yes.
It is so nice to be back at Glad Day Bookshop. They've done an amazing renovation in here. If you're local, please stop by. Before we get started, I just wanted to do a land acknowledgement. Glad Day is on the land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Huron-Wendat. They have curated an amazing collection of Indigenous books. It has been a terrible year for news about Indigenous communities, and it is important to think about ways in which we are complicit in those acts, ways we can unthink colonialism, and Glad Day is a great place to start. Yes. I'm Anthony Oliveira. I'm a PhD culture critic, dumpster raccoon, and this is Peyton Thomas.
Hello.
Peyton is a journalist with bylines in Pitchfork, Billboard, and Vanity Fair. Yes. This is his first novel, Both Sides Now. Look at that cover. It is a beautiful object.
It is beautiful. Yeah, we have a trans cover model as well, which is something I'm very excited about. Miles McKenna, shout out.
You're going to give us a reading?
Yes.
A little bit of a taste?
Yes, a little bit of a taste for those of you who are curious about Both Sides Now. It is the story of a high school debater, a trans boy high school debater who finds himself asked to debate about transgender rights at a national competition. So I'm going to get into it. I'm going to read from the first chapter of the book, just the opening. I think it's also, I will also say, Anthony also gave us a land acknowledgement, but I want to say that this novel was written on the ancestral and contemporary territories of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Dakota. And with that, let's get into it. Chapter 1. Story. We're the Soviets? You and me? Come on, Finch. When have I ever steered you wrong? He's got a point. In all our years of debating together, Jonah Cabrera has only steered me right. In my bedroom, back home, there's a bookshelf that groans and sighs and threatens to split under 4 years of blue ribbons and gold medals. It's an inanimate testament, that shelf. Listen to Jonah and you, Finch Kelly, will go far. Still, I'm skeptical. You want us to role-play as Stalin's cronies? Oh no, not as cronies. Jonah swivels to the blackboard, scrawling his points in white chalk. It's 1955. Stalin is 6 feet under. The Cold War is getting colder. Eisenhower just rolled out the new look. I watch him, hunched over my desk and chewing hard on yellow number 2. Remind me what the new look was? More nukes, more Kovops, he says, standing tall, sounding sure of himself, and way more American propaganda getting piped past the Iron Curtain. Got it. I pull the pencil, now a beaverish twig, out of my mouth and take some notes. I won't lie, he's selling me. Keep talking. In 10 minutes, the two of us will stride out of this classroom and onto the Annabelle School's Broadway-sized stage. We will stand before hundreds of spectators, and we will argue in speeches lasting not more than 8 minutes that every nation on Earth, no matter how rich, poor, or prone to the incubation of terror cells, deserves endless nuclear weaponry. Do we actually believe this? God, no. Least of all Jonah, the clipboard-toting, signature-gathering student activist bane of our local nuclear power station's existence. Among the many buttons presently dotting his backpack, I can see a little one, the color of sunshine, reading, "Nuclear power? No thanks." But still, he stands before the chalkboard, doing his utmost to build the case for Armageddon. Both teams, the US, the USSR, they're fully ready to plant mushrooms all over the map, says Jonah, with a grand sweep of his arm across the chalkboard. And the only reason they're not raining burning hell down all over the planet is mutually assured destruction. I glance at my stopwatch. 8 minutes left. Scrolling way faster than I'd like. This idea that the only defense against nuclear weapons is more nuclear weapons, Jonah says, because why hit the Ruskies when you know they'll hit you right back? As he says this to me, Jonah scribbles a series of suggestive illustrations on the blackboard. Smoke, flames, innocent civilians disintegrating into radioactive ash. If the whole Greenpeace thing falls through, he might have a future as an artist. Of course, if either of us wants any kind of future at all, we'll have to go to college first. And if we best the Annabelle School in the final round of this tournament, the North American Debate Association of Washington State will award us an enormous, gleaming trophy, one that would look great on college applications, and more urgently on scholarship applications. Jonah's mom is a registered nurse. My dad's on his 6th month of unemployment and his 7th step of Alcoholics Anonymous. Neither of us can afford to shake sticks at this particular hunk of golden plastic. Okay, but Jonah, Annabelle knows exactly how to refute that case. Not if we run the case in the 1950s, Jonah pleads. He's literally a blue ribbon pleader. He is very convincing. Come on, Finch. Time travel? Ari is never going to see this coming. He's talking about Ariadne Schechter, the Annabelle School's prodigy of a debate captain. My worst enemy, my arch nemesis, the fresh water to my salt. I despise her. I truly do, for so many reasons. Her noxious lavender vape fumes, her unironic love for one milk-snatching Maggie Thatcher, and not least of all, her early admission to Georgetown's School of Foreign Service. I settled for a purgatorial deferral letter. I'm still upset about it. I think I'd be less upset, mind you, if Ari's dad hadn't donated $40 million to erect the Schechter School of Sustainable Entrepreneurship on a high cliff at the edge of campus. But I can't fall into that swirling vortex of a grudge just now. Not unless I want to lose this round and this state title and fall even further out of Georgetown's good graces. This pretend-to-be-commies angle is definitely creative. I'll give him that. It may be the only thing I give him. I'm just worried it's too creative, rule-breakingly creative, the kind of creative that'll send Ari whining to the judges. Okay, point 1, you're never not worried, Jonah says, perching now on the teacher's broad war chest of a desk. He gets like this when he's antsy, pacing, snapping his fingers, sitting on anything but, God forbid, a chair. And point B, you know we need to spice it up this round. End of the day, end of the weekend, everyone's 5 seconds from falling asleep. You included, apparently, I say. You just said point 1 and point B. Did I? Damn. He flashes me a sheepish grin, and then a yawn, his arms flying high above his head. Guess we need to get creative then. Wake ourselves up. By arguing the whole round in Russian accents? Who said anything about accents, he says, all innocent. I saw you in the Seagull last semester, Jonah. I know you're dying to flex your dialect work. But not the time, I tell him, not the place. Fine, no accents. Serious business only. Jonah, still fidgeting, drums his knuckles against the top of the teacher's desk. Sturdy, antique oak, the furthest possible cry from the particle board and plastic of our own Johnson Tech, 90 minutes away on the outskirts of Olympia. If we go with the standard case here, like define this house as NATO or whatever, we basically have to argue that more nukes are a good thing. Right. Hard case for anyone to make, especially you, tree hugger. But if we set the debate in the Cold War, cast ourselves as the Soviets, make Annabelle argue for the US of A, rocking to and fro on the desk, Jonah disrupts a decorative apple. World's best teacher etched in the glass. It teeters. I hold my breath. We don't have to hash out all the boring entry-level arguments, he says. We don't have to touch MAD. We can run a more historical case, talk about communism. The apple steadies itself. I exhale. And capitalism, I say, and sit up straight and snap my fingers. And the Truman Doctrine and HST, and if we can link that last one to de-Stalinization, we could even... His hand finds my wrist, halting my Ticonderoga. Knew I'd get you on board, he winks. Comrade. Thank you.
That was lovely.
Thank you.
And first of all, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
This is your first.
It is my very first,
of
yeah.
many, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
So, for the people who haven't read it, which I had the pleasure of doing this weekend, it's so good. Please read it. How would you describe this book to people?
So it is first and foremost, it's a rom-com. Like we have the jacket summary is like, this is a very intense ethical debate. Will he debate for trans rights? Will he stick to his principles? But he's also falling in love with this Jonah fellow you just met. And wondering what to do about that. He knows that he's trans. He's less sure about his sexual orientation. He's not really sure anyone could ever really like him like that. He's not sure he can even be like a gay man or a queer man as a trans man. So he's figuring out all those questions as the book goes along, as he decides whether to do this debate. So it's very much like if you liked Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, if you like rom-coms, I think you'll find a lot to like here. And it's asking some questions about, why do trans people always have to defend our existences? Is there ever a time when it's a good idea to debate? What's the purpose of debate? So we're going quite deep into these philosophical questions, but it's also, one review was like, terrible things are happening to him. Worst of all, though, his debate partner is really cute. And that's the essence of the book, I think. Yeah.
Where did it come from? Like, what made you have to write this?
Well, so it, It started as a book about a cross-country runner who gets an abortion.
Oh, that's a different book.
It was a very different book. And the main character of that book had this trans brother who just kept pulling my focus. And I was captain of the debate team in high school. Debate was my life. And at a certain point, I was like, I need to write what I know. I need to go back to debate club and set a whole book there and make it really, really nerdy and dweeby, because that's what I know how to do. So it did morph very organically into this book about debate and reckoning with having to go to a debate tournament. It's inspired a lot by people I met, people I knew, debates I had. Like, I mean, it's all fictitious. There's no one here who's like based on a real person for legal reasons. But no, it's very inspired by those days. I was drawing a lot from my own personal life. I was not like out as trans in high school by any means, so Finch's experience is very different from my own. But there's a lot from life, as it were. Yeah.
You, what I found so refreshing about the book is you skip all the stuff you expect this book to have to do.
Yes.
Like, Finch is already quite far along on his journey.
Yes.
And then we're at this stage, as you say, that actually is quite fresh, that I don't actually see in a lot of books.
Yeah.
Was there like a half book you threw out, or did you always knew it was going to start this way?
No, yeah, I always knew. I didn't want to write a book about a trans character that was about transition so much. I think that's been, like, it's been done. It hasn't been done well, but it's been done. And I think narratives like that, they kind of encourage like a kind of cis spectatorship that like it's all about the transition. We don't care what happens before or after. So Finch knows who he is. He's been out for a while. He's moving along in his transition. We get some details about like surgeries he wants to have, about his medication, but it's not the main focus. Really, what he's figuring out is, I mean, who do I want to share my life with? Does anyone want to share their life with me? If I want to date as a trans person, like, I know there are going to be all these obstacles. He's kind of self-hating in that. He's like, I don't think anyone want to date me. Like, I'm too weird. It's all the stuff with being trans, and he overcomes that over the course of the book. And that's really his journey. Is like, okay, I know who I am now. Who do I love? Who am I gonna share that with? Yeah, that's sort of his journey over the book.
Again, one of the things, this is similar, but one of the things that's so refreshing, like you talk about this sort of self-hating dimension to Finch's character. I mean, we're right there with him as a narrator, so he'll have thoughts that are like, well, that's not the right way to say that, but that's how I feel. Similarly, like, you have a moment that I found really interesting, I hadn't really seen in a lot of YA fiction, where he comes out to somebody and immediately regrets it, and immediately is like, that was the wrong person to trust. I can't think of too many scenes I've seen of that. Like, what made you want to take those kinds of risks with the text? Yeah,
so I mean, I definitely wanted to write a trans character who was not like the perfect peachy keen, like, little trans guy who never does anything wrong and is constantly educating everybody else. Like, he knows who he is. That doesn't make being who he is any less difficult. And so there are, internalized biases that he's working through. Like, no one can ever like me. I'm trans. And, he's dealing with that really head on. We never like dive too deep into like self-loathing or anything.
Right.
He's confronting these things. Loved ones in his life are speaking back to him. When he does decide to come out to Ari, it turns out to be kind of a revelatory moment for Ari, but it's grating for Finch. He's like, this is mortifying. This is awful. Like, he comes out to Ari. Again, I don't want to spoil too much. He comes out to Ari, and she's immediately like, oh my God, like that Hilary Swank movie. And Finch is like, no, I shouldn't have told you. Like, it's... because we talk about coming out as if it's one moment, one big thing. There's National Coming Out Day, and that's when you make your like a Facebook statement or whatever. But really, it is something that you have to go through every single day. It's something you're constantly doing, like every time you meet another person and it becomes relevant. I was signing some books today at a local bookstore, and the employee who was assisting us was an older gentleman, and he was reading the jacket copy, and he turned to us and said, I'm 57. I didn't come out till I was 43, and it was because we didn't have books like this when I was a kid. And, that, it was incredibly moving. It was also a moment of coming out from someone who's obviously done it many, many times. So every single time you're sharing that information about yourself with someone, there's this inner calculus, like, can I trust this person? Am I in danger? Will they respond to it lovingly or embarrassingly? Unfortunately, Ari does, like, kind of later come around and, like, get her act together. But, you know, I think it's important to just, sometimes it's not like the storybook moment of coming out and feeling triumphant. Sometimes it's like, I should not have shared that with you. You were not ready for that information. But
or it's just awkward both ways. Like,
yes,
it's just like,
like,
oh, that was the worst, but it's done.
Yeah, like, it's coming out scenes, like, I mean, like, they get dramatized a lot in fiction, right? But it's also just like a sandwich munchingly, like, ordinary thing that happens every day, right?
Yeah,
so,
he's thinking about it throughout the text, like, who knows, who doesn't know, who can be trusted with that information. It's also a very, and this was also surprising to me reading YA. YA tends to be, I mean, for simple market reasons, tends to be pretty apolitical on its surface.
Yes, yeah.
This is a very political book. Like, they're talking about very contemporary politics, particularly American politics.
Yes.
Not just, like, the trans debate, but, like, Ocasio-Cortez, and, like, all the characters are incredibly politically engaged as characters. They have different points of view. As, like, how, is that coming out of your own personality? Is that something you were, like, fighting for in the text?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's part of it is just, like, being true to the world of high school debate. Like, the dweebiest kids ever joined debate. Like, I was 14, and me and all my other 14-year-old debate friends were, like, subscribing to The Economist. Like, we were just, like, that's sort of really where our minds are at. And there's, you know, when you do go to these tournaments, you're trying to stay up to date on the news, because any current event could come up in a debate topic. You know, that being said, I think when I did choose to discuss political issues in the book, it was always to push the plot forward in some way. Like, I'm never just giving someone a sermon, because I don't like that in any kind of book. You know, the characters are discussing these issues. You know, they're at different places in their own political developments. Like, even Finch is sort of initially like, yeah, whatever, I'll just, like, you know, swallow my pride and debate against trans rights. What does it matter? And he kind of comes to a different conclusion over the course of the text, after getting perspectives from different people about the value of debate and the value of this particular debate. Yeah, I mean, it's, so the simple answer is that, like, every debate nerd in high school is a total big nerd. There was one review I read from a debate teenager who was like, no, this is pretty good. I mean, 4.5 stars, not enough stats. And I was like, you are the audience for this book. Like, you know, but it's, I also tried not to date it too much. Like, there's, you know, like, when we do mention, like, he who shall not be named, it's very sparing. Like,
I don't think you used his name in the text.
Once I do.
Yeah?
Yeah, once I do. But it's, like, as a springboard to talk about how, like, Obama also made mistakes, kind of thing. So it's, you know, it's not about ragging on any one given politician. It's about navigating different ideologies and figuring out when it's worth engaging with people about these issues. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we were talking beforehand, and I was like, the, like, grad school way to ask this question is like, well, what is it about the way this text is interested in, like, the limits of liberalism, right? Yeah. Like, because it is sort of thinking about, like, what, I guess the YA way of asking that is, like, when are there issues we just should not be debating anymore? Like, that seems to be the question that's at the heart of this text. Like, because these kids are in a very strange, and to be honest, I was not aware of this situation. Like, they have to debate both sides of the issue. They don't know which side they're going to be on, and they have to be ready to go. And it's like life or death issues. It is like, can a trans person use the bathroom? Like, where do you feel like this text ends up landing with that? How does a person in this position deal with that? Like, do you feel like you come to a summative...
I mean, so, like, if I had to sum up my own position, I mean, it evolves over the course of the text. Finch makes a decision about this particular debate. And it's asking a broader question, like, when is it worth debating? What's the value of debate? I personally, you know, I grew up in a very conservative religious environment, and debate for me, and having to debate things that I didn't believe in, was a way of opening up my own mind and interrogating my own preconceived notions, right? So it was very valuable for me in that way. I think that all of us, no matter what our political dispositions are, we could do with evaluating our own ideas and asking ourselves what our blind spots are and constantly reassessing and evolving and seeking out new voices. I think we can all do that, and I think debate can facilitate that. At the same time, like, I don't ever want to see like a neo-Nazi jumping into my mentions being like, debate me, coward.
Right,
like, that's
right.
not like, you know, sometimes one point that's made early on is like, even people who are smarter than us and good people and have done so much more for the world than we'll ever do have made mistakes and missed things. My friend Bethany Hindmarsh talks about, like, you know, it's important when you realize that someone you look up to has made a mistake. Ask yourself, what are they missing? What am I missing? And use that as a way to evolve as a person. So I do think there's great value in reading things you don't agree with, in talking to people you don't agree with. At the same time, you know, like, I don't want to live in a world where like trans youth are just ground down to exhaustion because they have to defend their own existences every single day. Like, we have to strike a balance. At some point, people need to just get with the program. And probably like doing intractable debate with like bad faith actors is not the way to do that. Yeah.
It's a very American
Yes.
book. It's I mean, it's like Finch is, as a character, is obsessed with relocating to Washington, D.C.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
The terms of its trans debate are very American,
Yeah.
but the characters are aware. Like, there's a moment where Finch is strategizing with Jonah and is like, "Well, what if we take the British position because TERFs in Britain are having a lot of success with this argument about women's rights versus the American argument about like Christianity and like defending traditional womanhood." What doesn't come up is Canada.
Yeah.
Is that like a choice you made? Is there a way
sure.
you feel that cake cuts differently?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was deliberate. Like, I knew I wanted to set the book in the United States. Like, it's for different reasons. I did set it in, like, on the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in Vancouver, so that was like familiar to me. But you know, it is very American. It's set in the United States. I felt that was where I needed to set this story. And I also feel that, I mean, certainly this was written between 2018 and 2020, when the United States was having a very rough time. As I'm sure you may know, it was not great, especially for young trans people. There's, you know, in the past year in the United States, there's been a wave of incredibly virulent anti-trans legislation in the United States. And at the same time, we're seeing you know, a newly rejuvenated anti-trans hate movement building in the United Kingdom. And I don't see those forces building so much in Canada. There was an incident at Toronto Public Library a couple of years ago where a member of that hate movement did like book a room and give a talk here. And that's something in my acknowledgements, I thank the Toronto Public Library.
I saw that.
Yeah, I was like, thank you for the computers that I wrote this book on, but not for that dumb stunt with what's her name, the TERF.
Yeah.
Which I mean it. Like, it's but you know,
I'm sure
I
we
think
ran into each other in the crowd.
it was a protest outside. It was great. But you know, so when Finch is thinking about this, he's trying to come up with anti-trans arguments. And he's saying, I don't think that the American argument, like the legislative case anyway, it tends to come from places where the religious right really has a stronghold, and that tends to be the tenor of the discourse around it and the legislation. Whereas in the United Kingdom, it's like women's rights, and these trans people are taking rights away from women and girls, and women aren't going to be safe in the bathroom anymore. And so it's a very different approach to the topic.
Right.
And and like women who would like call themselves liberal are falling for it.
Right.
So yeah, like he's talking about like the different places this opposition is coming from. And, you know, that's a really dark moment in the book where he's saying, like, let's just do the UK case. Who cares? Right. And Jonah's like, you take a breath. Like, let's talk about this. This is not healthy for you to be parroting this discourse. So yeah, there's not a lot of Canada in the book, even though I am like born and raised in Canada. I've only ever lived in Canada, but that's just the nature of the characters.
It's interesting to sort of try to figure out, like, is Canada hybridizing these two arguments is sort of a weird thing to try to figure out. To Jonah,
yes,
I want to ask about the Jonah
Yes.
is our primary, spoilers, not really, it's on the book jacket, our primary love interest
Yes,
in the
they're in
text.
love.
He's very three-dimensionally realized. He comes out of a very different milieu than
Yes.
I think you
yeah.
do.
Yeah, big time, yeah.
How did you get all
Yeah.
that? Where did Jonah come from for you?
Well, so, I mean, the simple answer. So Jonah's Filipino-American, and my first debate partner in high school was Filipino-Canadian. And, we debated together for years. And when I was sort of drafting the book, I actually got back in touch with her and said, like, hey, do you want to, like, read through the book, like, translate the Tagalog, like, let me know that I've got all the recipes right and everything. And she jumped right in, and it was lovely. Like, so much of... again, like, no one in this book is based on a real person, but so much of, like, Jonah's family and, like, just and his culture is, based on, my own debate partner from high school and the times that we had prepping together at her house. Like, it comes from a deep friendship with her, and it was directly informed by her. Like, she came back into my life a decade later and said, yes, like, let's make this work. So I did, as far as, like, research, I did look into, I read some things about, like, Filipino LGBT people and Filipino Christianity in the United States. I read about, like, the lives of LGBT Filipinos in the 80s, because there's a brief reference to, like, a relative of Jonah's who lived in the Philippines during the AIDS crisis, right? So I was learning more about that. But yeah, some of it was research, much more of it was just, like, personal experience and friendship and that relationship, yeah.
What about Finch? Where are you the same and where are you different as people?
Yeah. So, I mean, Finch is extremely neurotic and anxious, like yours truly. He's also in a very different place as a teenager than I was. Like I said, I grew up in more of a Christian religious environment. I was not out as trans until like university, and Finch figures out in middle school. He's like, this is who I am, this is great, put me on the puberty lockers, let's get cooking. So he's had a very different life experience than I have, but some of what he's going through as far as, okay, I'm trans, what does this mean for my love life? Like, who would be attracted to me? Like, that, those are real things that I was puzzling through in a way. Like, through this book, I was working through those feelings of my own and figuring out what that would look like and figuring out my own sexual orientation. So yeah, there's a lot of that in this book, a lot of processing. I kind of figured it out along with Finch in that way. But yeah, he's ahead of the curve. He by the time he's 27, he's going to be he will be on Capitol Hill. He's cooking with gas.
Do you think there's a sequel
I don't
in
know.
the works?
I mean, we'll see. One character who I'm curious about, like, what they're going to do next is Ari.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems like Ari would be the next focus for the sequel. I mean, without spoiling too much. I'm very curious about what happens to Ari, what Ari does next.
As am I.
Yeah.
We end on a
Yeah.
cliffhanger.
We do a little
there.
bit.
Yeah.
So hashtag in the chat Ari sequel if you want to see an Ari sequel. But yeah, that's.
Are there any questions from our illustrious guests in the room? Or I don't know if I can read here. Well,
yeah,
not,
if you have questions in the live stream or here, raise your hand.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, darling.
Never met you before.
What was your favorite scene to write?
Okay.
Oh, hang on. So the question was, what was your favorite scene to write?
What was my favorite scene to write? I think it was the first kiss, because that was like, I had that. Some people write in a non-linear way, and they'll write the scenes they're most excited about. And for me, it was like, that was the carrot dangling in front of the donkey. It was like, just get through the book so you can write the first kiss scene, all right? Like, get there and do it. And I had so much fun writing it. And it's such an emotional climax of the book. And Finch is in such a low place when it happens. I really think it all came together beautifully. The scene I rewrote the most was the intro. Because originally...
The one you just read?
The one I just read. Because originally, like, it's like... They're in the debate prep room, and then they go and have the entire debate, and I write speeches for everyone. And my editor was like, "All right, like let's condense this a little. Like, we don't need lectures on nuclear proliferation right off the bat." But
it does an amazing, because the characters are debating the same debate over and over again, and you do an amazing job of knowing when to show it and when not to show it. To just tell us, like, this is how it went.
Yeah, because no one. no one actually wants to. I had this idea originally. I was going to do like transcripts of all the debates, and I was like, no one wants to read that, Peyton. Like, because the point is to develop the characters through the debates. This is the person who's like, more stats. I was like, I hear you.
More
high
kissing.
School self wants to read those transcripts.
Yes, I do. My high school self may want to read the transcripts, but in the moment, it's like, what are they feeling going into this round? How is Finch feeling coming out of it? Does he feel ashamed of what he just said? Does he feel proud? Like, what are the people they're arguing against? How do they make him feel? Like, there's kind of a pivotal scene. They crush this other team of two boys. And then after the round, he sees the two boys like consoling each other and kissing. The tennis boys. And it's this moment for him of like, these guys, I mean, they lost the round. They have each other, and I have no one. He's just in despair. So that's really the launch pad. It's you don't need to see the whole policy debate like 8 times, but you need to understand how Finch is reacting over the course of the book and how it's wearing him down. Yes,
the kissing. Yes, yeah. So they can finally lock lips. And,
right. Yes.
I think there's 2 kinds of writers: the ones who can enjoy a like romance scene, and the ones where it's just like labor. Like,
yeah.
Oh god, this adjective is in the wrong. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I did have fun with that scene. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else out there with questions? Yes.
Were there ever any parts where you had a bit of a mental block, and then how did you get through that?
Okay.
So the question was, were there any parts where you had a mental block, and how did you get through that?
Yeah. Well, I think my biggest mental block was on a subplot that is just no longer part of the book. It had been a part of the book since the inception. I might as well essentially Finch's little sister sort of hatches a plan to apply to the local college for Finch without his knowledge. And then that throws a wrinkle in his plans. And it was so convoluted, and it was just messing up the book's structure, and we were trying to figure out a way to just tweak it, and I was like, let's just get rid of it. Like, she does not need to, we don't need to have her colluding against Finch to get him into Evergreen. Like, that is not adding anything to the book. So the way I got past that block was just cutting it out of the book entirely, which is sometimes what you need to do. Like, and that was a kind of a late stage development, so there was some panic. I'm like, oh my god, like, this is the buttress of the book, it's holding it together. It wasn't. Like, we got rid of it.
It's weird, there's no ghost of it in
the
text. Except,
like, there's one scene where he finds out that his little sister's been playing on his computer, and that was supposed to set the seed of like he logged in and applied, and it's gone. But so that's
the very broken computer.
The very broken computer. Yeah. Again, because I wrote this book at the Toronto Reference Library while old men looked at porn all around me during the summer of 2019, because I could not afford to have my own laptop fixed. So a lot of laptop angst went into this book. Finch, I feel that very.
That is on the page. It feels very real.
Yeah,
the frustrations of the computer that won't boot up.
Yeah.
Anyone else out there? Yes.
I wonder what your experience has been like being a debut author in such a strange year.
Yeah.
So the question is, for all the people watching from home, what is it like being an author during such a debut author during such a strange year?
Well, I can tell you that I was not expecting to do my book launch surrounded by like a semicircle of people in masks. That's new. That's weird. Or like talking to a cell phone to people around the world, because we couldn't. There was talk about a book tour initially, and that is, I'm doing some virtual appearances in the fall, which you can look out for, but I expect that I will not be traveling. The Delta variant messed it up for all of us, which is a bummer. I'm hopefully next year I will be able to go out and see people. But honestly, maybe the one hidden gift of the pandemic, if such a thing exists, is that it made me sit in my apartment and work on this book for 2 years. Like, and I was not allowed to leave. Like, it's just very conducive to, digging deep and being productive. Yeah.
I had a similar, I guess I'll write the book I was supposed to write all this time. Yeah.
Like, when you're so bored, you're like, might as well work, might as well.
Might as well write a masterpiece of YA.
Thank you.
Any last questions? No? Well, that is it. And I don't, to be honest, if you asked a question out there, I don't know how to see it. So.
Thank you all for joining us around the world and in person here. It's very lovely I feel very loved to
Can
have
we
someone with you.
give Peyton a little love?
Thank you.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
For those of you at home, again, it is Both Sides Now from Penguin Teen Canada. You can pick it up here in Glad Day if you're in the city.
Yes.
And wherever fine books are sold.
Yeah, it's also, we have an audiobook, which is read by Scott Turner Schofield, who is a trans voice actor. So we got a trans author, trans voice actor, trans cover model. All the people blurbing it on the back are trans. Like, this is a thoroughly 100% trans joint here.
I see my good friend Kai Cheng Tom.
Yeah,
if you're
we
out
love
there,
Kai Cheng Tom. Hi. So, yes, check out the audiobook if that's your thing.
And you're going to sign some copies for us here.
And now
in
I'm
the
going to
store.
sign some copies.
We'll probably leave some on the shelves signed for
Yes.
anyone who's in Toronto who wants to come by and pick one up. Thank you again, Peyton, for this amazing book and for
hosting.
the
I
chat. Oh, my
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wonderful interview.
All right. I don't know how to... Have a good night, everybody
Bye.
out there.
All right.